No matter how unbreakable or pure a warband in the 40k universe thinks it is, there will always be an enemy force that is stronger and more resilient. As incredibly resilient as the Tyranids are, even the Great Devourer can fall victim to the infectious corruption of Grandfather Nurgle. Now, this isn't to say that it's a simple or a common form of corruption. Unlike humanity, that becomes the pawn of not only Nurgle, but all of the four major Chaos Gods through basic manipulation, when it comes to the Tyranids, or even the Gene Stealers, the process of infection requires Nurgle to inject his diseases directly into the hive mind itself. And the first thing I want to do is showcase how this process plays out by telling you guys the story of the hive city of Plaga, and then answering some of the basic questions that come up when you find out about the existence of Nurgle Tyranids, as if the Great Devourer couldn't get any more creepier. But before I do that, allow me to welcome you guys back to another episode of 40 Facts About the 40k Universe. I am your host Gersh1, and if you're new to the channel and are interested in learning more about the grimdark future of the 41st millennium, consider subscribing to the channel. For this entire month, I'm celebrating November, a month full of Tyranid lore videos, so if you have any questions or suggestions, please comment down in the comment section below. And if you like this new style of 40 Facts videos, vomit all over the like button as if you too were infected by one of Nurgle's blessings, because it helps out the channel and it praises the god of decay. But with all that said, let's get into 40 facts on Nurgle Tyranids. Let's begin with the Imperial Hive World of Plaga, which was covered in gargantuan capillary towers feeding the planet's dissolved biomass to the godlike Tyranid hive fleets up above. Few, if any, planetary resistance was left, for the Gene Stealer cult that had quietly interwoven itself into the planet's population had executed a perfect insurgency that took down the Imperial defenses in a matter of days. The planet belonged to the Great Devourer now, and as the cult members dragged the bodies of the last inhabitants found deep within the Underhive, the Gene Stealer Magus stopped to reflect on how easy the uprising had been. In that very important moment, she realized that if it wasn't for the malfunctioning power generators found at the core of all of the planet's hive cities that ultimately cut off the defenders' ammunition for their orbital weaponry, the invasion could have lasted months, if not a couple of years. And as she watched more and more cult members throw the mutated bodies of these Underhive dwellers into the reclamation pools, an unshakable chill went down her spine. These mutants didn't display the same abnormalities found within the other variant humans. Their faces and bodies were all different. Some had bloated and misshapen torsos that reeked of rotten flesh, almost as if they had been dead for days. Others had strange tentacle-like protrusions that squirmed and flexed as if they were still sucking the life out of the host. Unbeknownst to the Gene Stealers, these were no ordinary mutants. They were chaos-infected Nurgle worshippers that had sacrificed their bodies in order to spread their master's blessings to the Great Devourer. It was these cultists that had sabotaged the power generators and made it easier for the Hive Fleet to invade the planet. And as their bodies, which carried Nurgle's rot, liquefied inside the reclamation pools, one of Nurgle's most infectious diseases made its way up and inside of the orbiting Hive Fleet. The Tyranids had been infected, and the Magus could already detect the unnatural symptoms of the illness that would radically change the Hive Fleet forever. Nurgle's touch was instantly felt throughout the hive mind, and this is one of many homebrew scenarios as to how the Tyranids can fall under the corruption of Nurgle. As we dive deeper into this lore, I want you guys to imagine how you could take this concept and make it your own. I feel that the best part of the hobby is homebrewing, so whenever I get the chance to encourage you guys, I try to do it. But anyways, if we get into the pure substance of the Nurgle Tyranid lore, we first need to understand that the Tyranid race is arguably the biological end to most species' evolutionary trail. They are the supreme mortal beings. Unlike the Chaos Gods that have no threat other than themselves, the Tyranids have had to work unimaginably hard not to get wiped off the face of the universe and attain a position as a galactic apex predator. They've been able to achieve this on every planet and possibly every galaxy they've ever invaded because of how flexible and adaptive the Tyranid hive mind is. You see, the Tyranids have evolved the ability of rapid adaptation in accordance to a threat. So for example, when their enemies' plasma weapons are slaughtering their ranks, the hive mind adapts a form of chitinous armor that is less affected by this new projectile. If the world they are consuming is covered in a frozen tundra, the hive mind adapts its bioforms to fight in the freezing temperatures. Basically, there hasn't been anything that the hive mind can't evolve around. And when we look at the diseases created by Nurgle, the hive mind does an incredible job of brushing off any long-term effects of these diseases. This is because the Tyranids encountered infectious pathogens throughout their long history and are no strangers to the occasional ailment. When a breakout of one of Nurgle's poxes or any other diseases is detected by the hive mind, the order to isolate is given to the infected group and they move as far away as possible from any major horde, keeping at least a few synaptic creatures to control the contaminated group. If possible, they will launch themselves into suicide missions or allow the synapse creatures to slaughter the infected. This is obviously done so that the virus cannot spread to the rest of the Tyranid horde, but if quarantine is impossible, let's say maybe they are fighting on a planet infected with the zombie plague, then in that case, the hive mind will create a microscopic bioform that can fight the disease inside of the host cells. This might be different than what we usually think of as a Tyranid, because the most common bioform the lore talks about are large or giant predators that can stand toe-to-toe with human soldiers and even titans. But the Tyranids also fight wars on a microscopic level. These wars are so ferocious and brutal that the hive mind has created viruses that have even been found to counteract and hurt Plague Marines, one of Nurgle's toughest warriors. Now let's say that even these battles are not going in the favor of the Tyranids, and they can't find a way to destroy a malignant bacteria or virus. Then in these situations, the hive mind does something truly incredible. It allows its bioforms to get infected by the disease in order to deconstruct and incorporate the pathogen into its own DNA. This is why tendrils of a hive fleet develop very different characteristics over time. They are evolving with whatever it is that's trying to kill them. The longer the Tyranid's genetic makeup can mix with a virus or a bacteria, the more time it has to figure out a way to use it to its advantage. Oftentimes what happens is that the foreign body will be contained and then used as a weapon. As time goes on, this contagion will become less and less dangerous to the Tyranid's base genetic makeup until finally it coexists harmoniously with a specific bioform, just like the flesh borer beetles that are used in termagant weapons. They are a living bioform that was developed from the adoption of a foreign life form and is now used as ammunition. Now, how long it takes a hive mind to incorporate this new virus into its own DNA is unknown, so for a brief period of time, plague Tyranids will exist, but as long as the hive mind is kept pure, the disease can be reverse engineered. Now that we know just how difficult it is for the Tyranids to fall victims to a disease, the question becomes, well, how does Nurgle corrupt a hive fleet? And to answer that, we must understand why a creature turns to the god of decay in the first place. You see, it's not the actual disease that turns people into Nurgle worshippers, but rather the willful acceptance of his patronage in order to get rid of the pain and suffering caused by the disease. So for example, if you and I would catch the rot, we would be inundated with unbearable pain as our blood curdles in our veins, our eyes slowly fuse together into one globulous orb, and horns sprout from our head. That's when salvation from this torture would be promised by Grandfather Nurgle as his voice calls to us from the Immaterium. This is how the god of disease creates his own invitation into our souls. Our only option becomes everlasting life in his servitude or death. And this goes to show why so many humans embrace Nurgle. But when it comes to the Tyranids, no matter how painful it gets, there will always be a mental block controlled by the hive mind forbidding the Tyranid bioform from turning to chaos. And the only way to overcome this is by corrupting the very core of the Tyranid hive mind, which means contaminating the entire tendril, if not the entire hive fleet, so that no remnants of the hive mind can regain control of the bioforms. It's as if Nurgle was trying to control our entire bodies by only targeting our toes. It doesn't really work that way. So what Nurgle needs is a disease fast enough to avoid being quarantined, tough enough to survive attacks from Tyranid microbioforms, and contagious enough to affect every bioform, including hive ships. Only then could Nurgle begin to whisper into the collective consciousness of the Tyranids and convince them to accept salvation. This is why targeting the hive ships that create and guide all of the Tyranid bioforms is the best tactic for Nurgle. A task that is incredibly difficult because hive ships are protected by the shadow and the warp. Nurgle has no way of knowing how massive a tendril or a hive fleet truly is. It's like fighting an enemy you can't see until it's right in front of you, spitting acid in your face. So now the question becomes, why would Nurgle go through all the trouble to corrupt a creature that is extremely resilient to the point where an entire planetary cult would have to be wasted in order to corrupt them, and is a species that doesn't even have a soul to consume? The answer lies in Nurgle's desire to create the most virulent disease in the history of the galaxy. You see, if the Plague God can concoct a virus so deadly that even the Great Devourer has trouble getting better from, then what chance does any other race in the galaxy have against such a deadly disease? This essentially makes the Tyranids the stone upon which Nurgle sharpens his rust-encrusted blade. Nurgle's rot becomes stronger every time it gets eradicated by the Hive Fleet, and while it seems like the Tyranids win the majority of the time, Nurgle is happy to play the long game because his diseases are getting stronger. But now that we know all of this, let's get to the fun part of the video where we go over the terrifying records of Tyranid warbands infected by one of Nurgle's contagions, starting with the bioforms that carry the disease known as the chortling murrain. In a normal sentient being, this ailment causes a victim to laugh themselves to death. Within the Tyranids, however, the symptoms of this disease causes every Tyranid, from the Termagant to flying hive tyrants, to spill forth an uncontrollable and horrifying cackling sound akin to a human's laughter. And because the Tyranid's biology is so resilient, death takes longer to arrive, and by the time the disease finally kills the gargoyle or the gene stealer, its nightmarish laughter has ingrained itself into the psyche of any survivor. Next are the Tyranids infected by the chaos-infused virus known as zombie plague. This is a gift from Nurgle that slowly causes the skin, armor, and eventually the internal organs of a Tyranid to rot away. The eyes are some of the first pieces of soft tissue that decay away, so the resilient Tyranid body compensates for the lack of vision by creating bioforms with a superior form of bat-like sonar. High-pitched clicking sounds are emitted from these zombie Tyranids until even those organs decay, by which point a less effective but equally deadly bioform is left to wander around the battlefield, attacking anything it can get its hands on. And then there are the Tyranids infected by the Destroyer Plague, where the abdomen of a bioform becomes bloated until it bursts, releasing wave after wave of Tyranid-like plague flies. These Destroyer Tyranids have flies coming out of every orifice, with new boils bubbling up daily as pus leaks from open wounds and more flies nest back into the body of the Tyranids until the creature is entirely consumed by these demonic flies. And these are just a few of the many types of diseases Nurgle has used on the Tyranids. Since the opening of the Great Rift, the influence of chaos has grown throughout the galaxy, and with it, the battles between the Great Devourer and Nurgle. And that's the lore on Nurgle Tyranids, or Tyranids infected by Nurgle. I hope you guys see how the lore possibilities are there. It just requires a little bit of like your own creativity in imagining a warband that is both Nurgle and Tyranid. The results would probably be amazing. I've seen some kit bash work and it just looks awesome. The most memorable one obviously is Mini Wargaming. Mini Wargamer Matt created a Tyranid Nurgle hybrid thing a long time ago for a narrative campaign, so go check that out if you haven't done so. I'm pretty sure just look up Nurgle Tyranids Mini Wargaming and it'll come up. It's a very, very old story, but it's awesome. But if you guys have any questions about kit bashing or homebrewing your own Nurgle Tyranid lore, comment down in the comment section below. For the first 2 days that this video is up, I'm going to try to answer every single one of the questions that you guys leave behind. I'm not answering the questions on video anymore. I'm just answering down in the comment section below. Same thing if you guys have suggestions or any topics that you guys would like me to see cover for this Nidvember, let me know what it is in the comment section below, and consider subscribing if you haven't done so already. If you're new to the channel and you've made it this far and you haven't subscribed, please subscribe and understand that, you know, there's these 40 facts videos, but there's way more other content on the channel. Mostly it's like for the greater wogs, where we sit down and we answer some questions that you guys leave off and all that kind of stuff in video form. So those videos do exist on the channel. But again, thank you guys so much for listening. I can't wait to talk to you guys in the comment section below. I hope you've been enjoying Nidvember, and I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. This is Gershwin with One Mind Syndicate signing out.
Always used to put my freedom first in any situation. I knew I